England need another win to square the series and take it to a decider at the Oval. Avoiding defeat in either of the last two tests will ensure that Australia retain the urn at the very least.
The TMS Podcast
on BBC Sounds.
So England have announced their team today. James Anderson comes back in on his home ground to replace Ollie Robinson. We'll talk about that. We'll hear from Moeen Ali, who wants to thank the person who sent him a miracle cure for an injured spinning finger. We'll also talk Johnny Bairstow and discuss what looks like some strong clues to the Australia team. I'm joined by Will McPherson from The Telegraph and Scott Bailey of the Australian Associated Press. How are we all doing? There's been a break since Headingley. We've had the Women's Ashes to keep us going, but the longest time, I think, since June the 1st in this country without any Test cricket. How have you survived, Will?
I've still been working. My Australian players seem to have gone to all corners of Europe, but the interest in the Ashes is so high in this country that it's been a pleasure to carry on working through it all. I think I had one day off on Friday, but that was plenty.
Where have they been?
Spain, Paris, Amsterdam. A fair few went up to the north of Scotland to play golf. Some went to...
Someone been at Wimbledon, haven't they?
Yeah, Steve Smith went down to Wimbledon. Cameron Green came straight here. I think he may have been the only one, or at least of the players, he might have been the only one to come straight here. But yeah, all corners of Europe. And to be fair, good on them, I guess, after the Test Championship into the first three Ashes tests, it's been a hell of a couple of weeks or a month, I guess.
Now, in an era of early team announcements, Will, I think England have gone the earliest they've ever gone. More than 48 hours before the start of the Test match, they told us this morning, I think what we already knew, that James Anderson was coming into the team that won at Headingley, replacing Ollie Robinson. I mean, Ben Stokes effectively said it before the Headingley test.
He did, yeah. He told us the team before the last test.
So it's fully what we expected, James Anderson to play on his home ground.
It is, but it's still an extraordinary team on two counts, I think. One is that Moeen Ali's batting number 3, which is remarkable. For him to be batting number 3 in a Test match in 2023 against Australia, who he averages something like 23 against. I think he averages 16 in the last 5 years. It's remarkable, really. I've written a piece today that he's kind of in the spirit of a false 9 in football. He's kind of a false 3. He's there for reasons beyond his pure batting ability. He's kind of a shield, maybe Dayhawk. He's there just kind of providing a distraction and allowing other people to bat in their normal positions. I can't remember a selection like this, really.
James Anderson, never taken a Test 5 for him.
I know.
That's remarkable. I did not know that until I was looking at the honours board today and couldn't see him
Moeen's on there.
Moeen is on there,
yeah.
But Jimmy Anderson isn't.
No, it is remarkable. He's got an end named after him here, but he's never taken a 5 for him. And actually, of course, he's played so much more for England than Lancashire over the years. So he's got 1,100 Test wickets. He got there this summer, but as we know, almost 700 of them are for England, and there will be a few more for England Lions and England A, and probably lots of teams that no longer exist from back in the mid 2000s. But it's actually not one of his favourite grounds. You kind of think of. I think Trent Bridge would be the one I'd associate with him, which is funny because that's Stuart Broad's home ground, and it's where Stuart Broad took his 8 for 15. So Broad has kind of managed to claim Trent Bridge all of his own. But Anderson, maybe as a pure Test force, would be the ground I'd associate him with. Also, lots of wickets at Lords, but yeah, it will be. I think it will. There will be that sense of occasion with Anderson bowling from his own end here. He has bowled from his own end before, but something about it in an Ashes Test is really very exciting.
And there was a hand grenade of a statistic thrown towards the English press pack that I think tied us a little bit in knots. We think it could be the oldest seam attack for England in an Ashes Test since 1928. But what we do know is there's 4 pace bowlers north of 33.
We do know that, and the spin bowler is also 36. So the average age of the attack in the round is 36. If you assume that Ben Stokes isn't part of that attack, he's only 3. He's tantalisingly 3 short of 200 Test wickets. And you're actually starting to wonder whether he might get there. But there's a few other nearly statistics that England have got. You'd think that Stuart Broad might get the 2 wickets he requires to get to 600. Mark Wood is 3 short of 100, which feels like it's taken forever, and yet it feels like it's taken no time at all because he's played so few tests. given his ability. If Mark Wood gets those 3 wickets, they'll be the only team in history to have fielded 6 players with 100 Test wickets each, which is it's all kind of incredible. I think it's interesting your point about the 4 seamers all over 33. Wood's 33, Chris Woakes 34, Broad 37, Anderson 41 later this month. Wood and Woakes are kind of people who in about 2015 we might have said would be Anderson and Broad's successors in different ways. I know Wood is not like either of the older two, but Woakes is obviously quite similar to Anderson in style. And yet here we are with all of them in the same Test attack. It's just remarkable, really. It's the same. I can't actually think of a time when these 4 have played together either. Robinson obviously played with them in Australia 18 months ago, but this specific 4, off the top of my head, I can't remember when they played together.
And it hints at something that could be an entire podcast in itself, what England's team could look at in the next Ashes series.
Or even next summer.
Next summer, when there's 8 players in this 11 older than the age of 30. So certainly some churn in the England team on the horizon. Scott, from an Australian point of view, what do you make of Moeen Ali batting at 3 and a dad's army of a pace attack?
The Moeen Ali thing, I think you made a great point. It's one of the few times I can remember a team picking a player at number 3 and essentially in the same breath conceding that they don't have a number 3 to pick, if you know what I mean. Like, he's there because they don't have a number 3. So that's sort of part of it. But at the same time, if it allows Harry Brook to score runs at number 5, where clearly he's more comfortable batting, Johnny Bairstow sort of lengthens their lineup at number 7. So I think in that sense, I don't mind it from an English perspective, outside the fact it's just strange. And then in terms of the ageing attack, look, I find that interesting because we've seen throughout this whole series that the Australian batting innings have gone longer, far longer than the English ones, and Josh Hazlewood spoke about that today and why he thinks he might be able to play the last 2 tests back-to-back. Did some numbers before, it's something like, I think it's about an extra 35 overs combined that England's quicks have had to bowl per test than Australia's quicks, combine them. So if Australia can bat long periods of time here with that ageing attack, of course we don't know what's going to happen with Ben Stokes' knee. I know that Moeen Ali's found his magic potion and apparently he's fine to bowl long spells again, but there is a chance there for Australia to ground England down a bit. And also on the Mark Wood front, like, Australia certainly believed that they handled Mark Wood better in the second innings at Headingley than they did in the first. And potentially part of that was because he'd had a bit more work to get through by that point because he'd already bowled in the first innings. So again, he bowled those short, sharp bursts in the first innings at Headingley. If Australia can bat time, that probably works to their advantage, I would have thought.
You mentioned Moeen Ali and Johnny Bairstow. Will, you and I were talking about Bairstow earlier on when we were watching the Nets. His position's come under scrutiny. England have kept faith with him for this test, and presumably he'll play at the Oval next week as well. There's so much chat, isn't there, about Bairstow or Folkes, or Bairstow and Folkes in the same team. But the fact is, because Ben Stokes isn't really an all-rounder anymore, he's a batter. If England want to get 5 bowlers into their team, there's just not enough room to have Bairstow and Folkes in there.
And also, it's not only want to get 5 bowlers into their team, they have to get 5 bowlers into their team, because Moeen Ali can't be a 4-man bowling attack. He's not Graham Swan. He's not Nathan Lyon. Whatever the Edgbaston crowd might tell you. You can't play Moeen in a 4-man attack. You can't play Mark Wood in a 4-man attack. You can't play James Anderson in a 4-man attack. He's 41 nearly. So they have to have a 5-man attack. They're in a total bind. And actually, in a weird way, Ollie Pope's injury, while desperately unfortunate, kind of arrived at an okay moment because it created a slot in the team for them to get creative with, which they really, when they named the team for the Headingley, we thought, oh, this is a bit of a funky team with Moeen coming in at 7, Woakes coming in at 8, but they've kind of looked at those resources and they've realigned them a little bit with Moeen moving up to number 3. This is a slightly rambling answer to your question about Bairstow and Folkes, but people will say, well, Bairstow's gone back to number 7. Why couldn't Folkes have come in at number 7 as a straight swap? You're talking about a number 7 here, but you're not, actually. You're talking about a top 7 in the round. And my personal view is that Moeen Ali and Ben Folkes can't be in the same test top 7, especially when you've got an inexperienced pair of openers and all the rest. Like, Folkes has got many qualities. He's an excellent Test batter, but he's not especially against the high pace of this Australia attack. I really don't believe I think he has to be a number 7 behind a really secure top 6, and frankly, a top 6 with Moeen Ali at number 3 is not really secure. Obviously, Johnny Bairstow hasn't batted to his potential in this series yet. He showed how good he can be on the opening day of a series, and I think he'll probably, for all of the drop catches and the kind of other funny moments, strange moments that have happened in this series to him, being stumped off a bouncer being one of them, I think he should look back on that, getting stumped off Nathan Lyon, who he normally plays so well, on a runnable 78 in the first day of a series is a massive missed opportunity. Because if he had made that 100, even around 100, 22 more runs, this conversation would be so different.
I think there's so much to be said for picking your best keeper. Like I did some numbers during this break, and
you said this before the heading.
Yeah, I did.
You said you're surprised that England hadn't turned to folks when Pope got injured,
and I stand by it now. I mean, I did some numbers in that period. So Johnny Bairstow has made 12 dismissals in this series from 20 chances, so he's missed 8. Those missed chances have cost England 191 runs, as opposed to Alex Carey, who has taken 20 from 22, and his 2 missed chances have cost Australia 50 runs. That's a massive difference.
Can I just say I'm really pleased that you've done research before coming onto this podcast. That is so rare.
Yeah.
Well, it was a week or so ago, but we're famous for this podcast. But I mean, for me, if you were to swap the 2 Glovemen around, I think whoever has Alex Carey over Johnny Bairstow is winning this series at the moment. Because the chances, and maybe I've been a little harsh on Johnny Bairstow. I've counted the one in the first test where Khawaja edges it and it goes between him and Joe Root, and I think it's his catch.
It's his catch, yeah.
Yeah, but that's, again, England win the first test if he takes that chance. I know there's a lot of if, buts and maybes, but that's the first test there. A lot of those runs did come in the first test.
It's Edgbaston was the problem, keeping wise. If you look at Headingley, Bairstow is kind of I agree that he's missed a lot of chances. I think he's sort of become slightly a lightning rod for England's general fielding malaise, where, you look at Headingley, Bairstow did drop some chances there, but they probably only cost England a total of about 40 runs there. But was a Travis Head one in the first inning, definitely should have caught it, cost 30-ish runs, but quite a lot of time. Joe Root dropped 2 chances at Headingley, and they cost hundreds of runs. The Mitch Marsh one was the really bad one, but I think because Bairstow's he's dropped some catches, but he's also overall given the image of being an untidy wicketkeeper in this series. It's not just the ones he's dropped, the edges he's dropped, but there's been others. And that's created a picture in fans' minds, particularly, and ours as the media, that he's kind of possibly kept even more poorly than the statistics would bear out. And the fact that England have made a decision to move on from probably someone who is, I would say, at least Carey's equal with the gloves, in Ben Foakes. He is just a lovely keeper. He's an outstanding keeper, and that was a desperately difficult decision that England made at the start of the series. I thought it was the right one then. Obviously it hasn't aged desperately well. They've probably selected Johnny Bairstow as a wicketkeeper based on a few years ago. In the fact Johnny had turned himself into a really fine wicketkeeper,
and when he hadn't just broken his leg.
Exactly. We're talking about a guy who's come back from a really, really horrendous injury, and he probably hasn't kept at the level in this series that he did in 2019, or even before that, 17, 18, he was good keeper by then. So it is very difficult, but now I don't think they've got much choice because there's no space. As I said before, I don't see the space in the side. They could have bought Foakes in for Pope, but that would have meant no spinner, I think. Continuing no spinner, or continue with Joe Root as your spinner, and I think that leaves you in a tight spot. So yeah, it's a difficult one. A lot of people were shocked that Bairstow retained his place after Headingley, but I wasn't in the slightest. I didn't really see how they had any choice there.
And because of that lack of options, almost that lack of flexibility that England have got, because Ben Stokes can't bowl, they've had to be really flexible and push Moeen up to number 3, their third number 3 of the series. And I spoke to Moeen at Old Trafford earlier today. Mo, you've had a little break since Headingley. Big week coming up. How are we feeling?
Feeling good, excited. Obviously, the series has been brilliant so far. So, what I think will be great for everyone and Test cricket was that we win this one and then going to the last one 2-2, and it'd be amazing. So that's the challenge, and that's where the excitement comes from.
Okay, so if I told you on June the 1st, not only that you'd be batting number 3 in an Ashes test. But I just want to just reel off a few of the things that you've been involved in, okay? So you missed training to go and get your OBE. You'd been in trouble for spraying your finger. Your finger got cut, got left out of a test. You had someone from the NHS sending you a lotion to look after your finger. Now you're batting number 3. I mean, that's enough for a career, isn't it? Not just one test series.
Yeah, and actually, I feel like, see, I'm one of those guys that just goes with it. So that's why when I was asked earlier about after this series, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. More than likely, I won't be playing. But my career has always been things just happen, and things happen for a reason. And it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed all those things, and even something like somebody sending me the honey for my finger, and just those little things. Exactly what makes me content and happy, and I love it. Yeah, I mean, I never thought I'd be in this position right now. This is my month off, the first time I had a month off for ages, and I was also looking forward to that. But then, obviously, this opportunity will never come again, so I couldn't say no, first of all. And then all of a sudden I'm playing, and in the Ashes, probably one of the biggest series since 2005, back into Test cricket, and I've loved it. Yeah.
Tell us about this lotion that's been going on your finger, how it came about, who sent it, if it's worked.
So I got home after the Test match, and a few days later I've got this letter from this lady who says her husband's a big fan of mine and loves, obviously, cricket. And they were watching, and they saw the wound or the gash on my finger, and they thought this Medi honey would really help me, and told me that she worked for the NHS and privately and all that kind of stuff. And so I tried it, and it really healed my finger straight away, and I thought, wow, it's amazing. And at first I was like, it was amazing that somebody had written to me. The only thing I'm really gutted about is, so I put this letter on the table when I left my house, thinking when I come back and reply, or after this I'll reply back, and I can't find the letter. And I really want to reply to this lady, and I can't remember who it is. So if this lady listens to this, please get in contact somehow again, and I really want to write back and say thank you and things like that. So yeah, it's been really good, and I've kept it, and I would say it's been amazing. Yeah.
Let's see if the BBC can get you in touch with her. And then batting number 3. So you put yourself forward for it, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw after the first innings how we went about it, and not that we were bad or anything. I just thought Brookie's value at 5 and Johnny at 7 would be better for the team. And I thought, right, why not? I've batted 3 before, and let's do it. I mean, I just thought it was better, and I asked, and then Baz came up to me and said, yeah, why not? And then they thought about it, and then, yeah, I'm past that stage where it's about me and or averages or anything like that. It's just, I've always been a player that it's about what I feel like is best for the team, and I suggested it, and yeah.
Doing anything different to prepare? Maybe nets against the new ball?
Yeah, new ball. Just probably do more. Just to get because I actually felt like I was a bit behind in more in my batting than my bowling when I came back into the test side. Because bowling, I thought I'd be actually okay. I don't think I'd be amazing, I haven't been, but I wasn't as worried about the bowling than I would, apart from the finger, than I would be probably with the batting. And it was just like I felt like I've only been playing T20 cricket and trying to play shots, and your body gets used to only facing probably 19 to 20 balls, and I just need to get into that mode again, where at least if I get in, I've kind of then know how to go a bit longer and deeper and not lose the patience. I know I'll play shots, but it's still there's a process behind it. So just getting that right, really, and hopefully this week I've done that.
And if you are going to finish, because you said you're not saying yes, you're not saying no to India, 2 more tests, 2 tests to win the Ashes. What a way to go out.
It'd be amazing. I mean, I think it's a great way to go out anyway, personally, regardless. But if we win this series, and the reason why I came back was to win the series, and it was never about my own anything personal, or it's about me or what. I had the opportunity, and Stokesy phoned me, and I thought, what, let me get a taste of this new sort of era in Test cricket, and I came back to try and win the Ashes for sure.
The TMS Podcast.
How to Win the Ashes. The untold stories of 3 key Ashes series is available now on BBC iPlayer. Money, glamour, politics, spying, violence, takeovers, kidnapping, and photocopying. This is Sport's Strangest Crimes. From the man who tried to buy cricket.
One night, one game, winner take all, $20 million.
The kidnap of a super horse.
It must have been terrifying. Of course it was. How we got through it, I don't know.
A $1 trillion takeover which never took off.
Fraudsters of this level, they will never stop.
And an ill-advised errand changing F1 forever.
It will haunt the people involved for as long as they live.
Sport's Strangest Crimes. Listen on BBC Sounds.
It's been an unbelievable couple of months for Moeen Ali, who I think if we said on June the 1st, if we'd said back then, by the 4th test, he'll not only be playing for England, but he'll be the frontline spinner and the number 3. But to get to this stage, he'll have had to do a press conference that was interrupted by a fire drill, and he was on the road outside Edgbaston. Miss a day's training to go and collect his OBE. I mean, he was pressed today, Will, is this it? Are you going to play again? He said, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, but really he is saying no. We do think these are going to be Moeen Ali's last 2 test matches. And he said, if these are my last 2, I want to go out batting at number 3, because I've done a load of batting at number 3 in my first-class career anyway. Yeah, and I think the only response to Moeen Ali's last 2 months is the response he gave to Ben Stokes when he initially messaged him, which is lol. It's been absurd, hasn't it? It's just at every turn there's been something strange happening, and now he is one of the stranger test number threes you can remember. I don't quite know what the role is really, and yet I still think it makes some sense, as we were talking about before. I do still think there's some good sound logic in it. He was. I mean, if you'd said when Mo first played Test cricket in 2014, he as a bowler, England were looking for any which way to replace Graham Swan, and in Moeen they saw this guy who they thought was really talented with the ball, but incredibly raw, and actually a really lovely, refined batter who'd made his name as a stylish number 3 for England under-19s, then Worcestershire, and actually his first-class record at number 3, even including a few test innings, is outstanding. He averages 48.9 there, I think. He's got 9 of his 20 first-class hundreds are at number 3, I think. So he's a really... There is form for him being good number 3. That form is some distance in the rearview mirror now. I mean, he's just not that batter anymore. So it's a bit of a wing and a prayer job. I think one thing I'd say about Mo is, as a test bowler, to get 200 wickets is massively overachieving. Incredible, really, given the bowler he was when he first came into side. To not hit, but his batting has underachieved. He could have been a really serious test batter, but he's not been a serious test batter. It's been a kind of fly-by-night, loads of fun. He's played some of the most unforgettable innings England fans. Perfect for this team.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, maybe the perfect number 3 for this team. But he has underachieved. But he's on the brink of a double statistic, which is quite special. I think 15 men have got the combination of 3,000 runs and 200 Test wickets. Most 23 runs away from 3,000, which you would hope in 4 innings as a number 3 you would make those 23 runs. That's you look at the names on that list and it is pretty exclusive. Ben Stokes is also on the verge of that club, but also he's only got 197 wickets. But Mo, he's played 66 tests, so this is number 67. He's got there he's done it quite efficiently. He's just had one of the stranger test careers, and this 2-month period has just been the latest chapter.
When Moeen was speaking today, Scott, firstly, it struck me that if you told me that come Old Trafford, the 2 spinners on either side would be Moeen Ali and Todd Murphy, I'd have been very surprised. But he was also hinting, or I was sort of thinking about the fact that actually Moeen had played a bigger part in the Headingley Test than Australia's own spinner in Murphy, who was really marginalised in the second innings of that game. And Moeen was also asked about the importance of playing a spinner at Old Trafford. He's got a good record here, 16 wickets in 3 tests, I think. Now, you will be able to tell me more. I don't think Australia will leave Todd Murphy out, but there's certainly been a conversation about it, hasn't there?
I mean, there's an argument for it, given the lack of overs he bowled at Headingley. I think it was something like, he only bowled 2 overs in that 4th innings, which was the least overs bowled by an Australian spinner in an innings of more than 50 overs for more than a decade, right? So there's certainly an argument that you could leave Todd Murphy out of this side, and that way Cameron Green and Mitch Marsh could both play and wouldn't need to change things at the top of the order. But look, Australia have been very strong in saying that they want to play a spinner. They like to play a spinner. The last time Australia went into a test without a spinner was January 2011 against India at the WACA. So to me, it seems incredibly unlikely that Todd Murphy won't play this test. They also seem to think that there's a belief, right, that this wicket turns more than what Headingley did and offers a bit more for spin. But as you rightly say, Moeen Ali played a big role. He got the 2 big wickets as Smith and Labuschagne on the second afternoon at Headingley. And I personally think, if not for those 2 wickets, it's a very, very different game, right? Because it opens up Australia's middle order in difficult conditions on day 3. But, regardless of that, obviously Australia didn't feel that comfortable bowling him. And I thought they left it too late to bowl him. They needed to bowl him earlier in that first session on day 4. By the time they threw him the ball, it was kind of... He couldn't really get into a spell. There wasn't a lot of runs left. They threw him 1 before lunch, 1 late in the chase, and that was it. But, they certainly believe there's a role for him in this test. And I would be extremely surprised if they went without him.
We'll come back to Australia's team in a minute. Let's linger on the conditions at Old Trafford, because, Will, we've dragged you up to the north, and it's been raining again. England had to net indoors. This morning, Australia have managed to get outside this afternoon. It is a very mixed forecast for the Test match week, and in a game that England have to win. Firstly, that's not ideal, and secondly, we might see their tactics turned up to the max.
We might. England, obviously, we've had 16 games under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes now, I think. So none of them have been drawn. It's 12-4. I still don't think, even if there's a decent bit of weather in this game, but I don't think it will be a draw. I think they will. Ben Stokes will engineer something that creates a result, whether that's forfeiting an innings or it could honestly could be anything. But that's where I personally think the case for maybe not playing Murphy comes into the equation a little bit more. Stack the batting, get one of Carey or Green batting at number 8, which feels remarkably deep, especially when you consider the way Pat Cummins has batted at times in this
Stark
series.
And Cummins, when you
at 9 and 10, yeah. So potentially really deep batting side in a game where there's going to be a lot of overheads. Probably you have an extra seamer. I wouldn't do it myself because I just hate the look of Test teams without spinners, but. I do think I get the case for it. I get why people are arguing for it. I think Old Trafford traditionally is a ground, as Scott says, where in England you would say it spins a bit more than some of the others. There are also people who will tell you that since they turned the square round with the redevelopment, which has continued apace, by the way, this week is going to be another new look for fans tuning in and watching Old Trafford. But since that change... a decade or so ago, it spins a little bit less. But then, you look at the honours board you were talking about earlier, and Moeen's on there, Shakib Al Hassan's on there, Dan Vettori's on there. South Africa picked 2 spinners here last year, which in hindsight was a misread from them. But one is, I think you need one. But if they are to play Murphy, Cummins needs to use him better. Because he got that wrong. He left himself, because Scott Boland's had a bit of a tough series. I don't think I could still see him having a role to play at some stage, but he was struggling a bit at Headingley. Cummins left himself with just himself and Stark because he didn't trust Murphy. If he needed to get Murphy into the game as soon as he had a left-hander to bowl at in Stokes, but he didn't do that. So then Murphy was just sort of left grazing out in the deep. And if he can clearly hold a bat, but if you're a number 10 who fields a bit and bowls 2 overs the spin, I don't really see what you're rolling on the right side. So they've got to get him into the game.
Club cricket, that is.
Yeah, that is pure club cricket.
And even in the first innings, they didn't give him the ball. I think he bowled 7 or 9 overs in the first innings. It was certainly single figures.
He came on when Stokes was getting going.
Yeah, and obviously he got hit around a bit by Stokes, but got his wicket. But I think again in the first innings they had to show a bit more faith in him as well.
You talked about how this ground has changed, Will, that the square's been rotated, and there is that new addition for this year, the new hotel, the second hotel away to our right, rather disappointingly painted grey, whereas most of the other new buildings
weird, isn't it?
around Old Trafford are red. Not entirely sure why they've made that decision. We talked about how the ground has changed over the years. One thing that hasn't changed for a very long time, and this is mind-blowing, England have not won an Ashes test here since 1981. They've won an Ashes test at the Gabba more recently than that. Why is that? I mean, I was stunned to find that out, and it's something that's going to have to change if this series is going to stay alive going into the Oval.
Yeah, I have no idea why that's the case. There's obviously been a couple of draws this century in series that England have won. 05 and 13, the games here were drawn, weren't they? But yeah, it's not a great portent, that statistic, is it? It's not a pretty one at all.
And this is where Australia 4 years ago bounced back after a Headingley defeat to win at Old Trafford and retain the Ashes. They can do the same again here.
Similar circumstances, but a little bit different in that they had a tour match in between those games, I believe. This time they've all had that holiday, as we spoke about. Dare I say it, a much more relaxed group this time around than 4 years ago. Obviously a different leadership group than there was 4 years ago. So I don't know that Australia is seeing a lot of similarities in the way that they rebounded out of Headingley to this test match this time around.
It's also a very different feel around the series, isn't it? In that was a truly shocking defeat. The nature of that one was unbelievable, the Stokes innings, whereas and it also made the series 1-1 because Lords was drawn last time, whereas this one they're still 2-1 up, and they very much played their part in that game and lost a nipper, having won a couple of nippers.
Yeah.
So I can see why the vibe is more relaxed because of the personnel involved, but also B, just the nature of this series. I think they're exactly right to get away last week. Maybe a couple of players could have done with a tour game, but I think
the only ones who could have done the tour game, to be honest, largely are guys like Marcus Harris, who haven't been able to.
I mean, Michael Misa went off and got 100 for Glamorgan anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so Marcus Harris was offered the chance to go play a county game, from what I can make out. Not exactly sure. Like, I don't know if he was offered the chance from a county club or if Cricket Australia said, "Would you like us to try and find you a county game?" But he knocked it back because he obviously had that long stint over here at the start of the summer. I assume that's where he
he's at Gloucestershire.
I'm sure that's where he would have gone.
I'm surprised. I'm slightly surprised he didn't play. But then again, is issues around concussion subs and things like that these days that make all those things more complicated.
So on the subject of that Australia team, one man who we think is very likely going to come back into the side, mainly because he's been put up to speak to the press today, was Josh Hazlewood, and he was answering questions from the media at Old Trafford a little bit earlier on.
Obviously sat the last game out, and I guess I feel better for it, and having a rest and getting a bit of strength back in and getting ready for this game. So obviously fond memories of last time here in 2019, and it's good to be back here and hopefully get a game.
We've spoken a bit about the schedule so far and the workload for the fast bowlers. How do you feel now after a break? And did you need that break coming into that with the short turnaround?
I felt pretty good, to be honest. I mean, we haven't bowled a lot of overs in terms of what Test matches usually look like for us, and I guess the way with England, the way they play, that sort of gets us in the field for a little bit less in terms of workload. So I felt pretty good going to the game. It was probably the right call now that I sort of sit back and look at the whole big picture, but at the time I was definitely desperate to play, which is quite obvious, but it makes sense.
Hey Josh, were you, I suppose, in terms of this series, were you kind of most happy that you kind of got through the first test without sort of unscathed, and that's given you confidence for the remainder of the series, given, I suppose, your recent history?
Yeah, definitely. I, again, felt pretty good. I was probably a little bit underdone for that the World Test Championship, and then got ready for the first game, and I didn't seem too rusty when I was out there in the middle, and once you sort of get that big day of workload underneath you, that's you feel a lot better for the run. So I just sort of felt better and better as I was going along, and hopefully after that little break I'll come out firing again.
And just in terms of dealing with England's batting lineup, you obviously got Ben Duckett fairly early on the first morning of the series, but he and Zach Crawley have put together some quite handy partnerships over the series. Like, how do you view them in terms of the way they've played and how you approach them as a pair of openers?
Yeah, the top seven's quality, even top 8 now with Wogsy there as well. They're a dangerous lineup from start to finish, and they all bat a little bit differently, and sort of we've probably learned quite a bit in the last in the first 3 games, and we'll catch up again as bowlers and sort of dissect that and how that looks, and the positives and negatives and how we can improve. And we sort of do that after every game, and we'll do that before this one. So we'll suss it out.
And just Moeen Ali is going to continue batting at 3. Probably not someone you would have expected to be batting at 3 before the series.
No, definitely not. But I think he's batted everywhere from 1 to 9 or something like that. I think the stat was. So expect the unexpected with these guys a lot of the time, and just whoever walks out next, you just get ready and bowl them.
Yeah, sure. Josh, you could be very easily sitting here as the Australian team with the series already wrapped up, and that would have been a nice feeling, I know. But the fact that England did manage to get home at Headingley has kept the kind of excitement around the series alive. Can you, even from an Australian perspective, see the benefit of that a lot of people, maybe around the world, are still excited about the series because it's still alive?
Yeah, I can certainly see that aspect of it. I'd like 5-0, but no, I certainly see that point of view. It feels a lot like 2019, where the series was alive right until the end. So we've played in series in India where it's the same. As it goes along, it sort of just snowballs and gets bigger and bigger. So I can't see anything different for this week coming, and hopefully the rain stays away and we get a full game in. So again, excited for what lies ahead.
So, Scott, we think Hazelwood in, probably for Boland.
Almost certainly, yes.
And we've seen a pretty big clue that even though Cameron Green is below us taking some gully catches, earlier on when the cordon was lined up with what we expect the cordon to be of Warner, Smith, Khawaja, and then it was Mitchell Marsh taking the catches in the gully while Cameron Green was away to one side doing some bowling. Is that the biggest hint, the most obvious hint we've had that Marsh is going to play ahead of Green?
Definitely, and also notable that in that pack he was doing some run-throughs with, because he did some run-throughs before he bowled, and Scott Boland was also in that pack. So I think it was...
The stiffs.
Yeah, it pretty much, yeah, the reserves were over there. So I would, that all signs to me point towards the same top 7 as last test.
Which is disappointing, because I had a good 5 minutes planned on that debate of how Australia were going to get Marsh and Green into the same side, which we can sort of move on from now. It looks like Marsh is pretty much nailed on.
Yeah, I mean, the suggestion was, and maybe it was more of a suggestion from us than it was within the team, but, that potentially one of Mitch Marsh or Cameron Green, probably Cameron Green, I thought, could open in place of David Warner. And, Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald both refused to guarantee David Warner his spot when they were asked about it, in the hours after Headingley. So there was certainly at least plenty of speculation and some thought that could work. But, Cameron Green spoke on Friday. He said it would be a bit of a stretch for him to open the batting as well as play as an all-rounder. And he didn't think it was overly likely that he and Mitch Marsh could feature in the same side. Usman Khawaja spoke yesterday and was almost shocked by the fact that we were suggesting that anyone but David Warner could open.
They've been lining up, haven't they, to sort of praise David Warner. It's almost been like a political party, getting all the voices out there to get the message to the people that the support for Warner is there.
And I mean, this is a big selection. Like, if Australia was to leave David Warner out of this test match, which again, I don't think they will now, but if they were to,
that's it, isn't it?
Almost certainly be it. I mean, as everyone knows, he's made clear he plans to retire in January against Pakistan at the SCG. I struggle to see a way in which they drop him in this series and then bring him back for the start of the home summer against Pakistan. I think if he gets through to the end of this series, he's almost guaranteed that farewell test, right? So, but the big thing is, I thought Warner was quite good at the Test Championship final. Thought he was pretty impressive at Lords.
That half century made in the first
I think this debate is massively overblown. I think if he got out twice very cheaply to Broad at
and it's because it's Broad
at Headingley. Well. Exactly. If it wasn't Broad, he'd got him out. If Ollie Robinson had rolled him out twice, I don't think the conversation would be going on. Obviously, it is a massive problem for Australia that David Warner is getting out in the first over of a match and then the third over of second innings. Obviously, that's unsustainable. But I think he's having quite a good tour. I mean, as an opener in England, it's hard work, and I think he's going okay. Lord's contribution was massive. You mentioned the World Test Championship final, first morning, he battled so hard there.
And how much of a problem is it actually for Warner, or how much is the Warner problem being exposed by the fact that Smith and Labuschagne haven't really fired. Between those three, Smith, Warner and Labuschagne, in 3 Ashes Test matches, I think we've had 1 century and 1 half century. So should we not just be talking about David Warner? Should we be talking about all 3 of them as a batting unit not really firing?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. But I mean, there's no selection pressure on the other 2.
Of course not. But
yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously Australia haven't batted the way they would have liked from the majority of this series, I don't think. Obviously, Usman Khawaja scored runs at Edgbaston. So I should rephrase that. I think collectively as a team, they haven't batted the way they would like to have batted in this series. Some individuals have had really good innings. Usman Khawaja at Edgbaston, C. Smith at Lords and Mitch Marsh at Headingley. But we haven't had a test where 2 men have scored centuries. And just generally speaking, Marnus Labuschagne's probably, the more concerning of the lot almost, because he keeps getting starts and getting out. In particular with that shot he played at Headingley in the second innings there, which was quite decisive. So, I think, if they probably could have masked over the challenges that Warner's faced to some extent, but at the same time, I think, all eyes were on Warner going into this series regardless, and it's kind of been a situation where he's done enough to keep himself going without doing enough to lock himself in the whole way through.
I'll add 1 point on Warner. He got a pair here 4 years ago. Broad's on 598.
So there's 1 Ashes series still alive this week. 1 Ashes Urnals has already been retained. Australia's women won a tense match at Southampton yesterday to make sure they will take the Ashes back down under. England need to win at Taunton tomorrow to ensure that Australia don't win them outright. Well, firstly, let's just linger on what a fantastic Women's Ashes series it's been, and just think about, can England just square the series at Taunton? That'd be a fair result, wouldn't it?
It would be a fair result. I think Heather Knight was bang on when she said it's been the best one of these best women's series ever, but certainly best multi-format one we've seen. She's been involved in most of them, going back over the last decade or whatever. I think a draw would be a fair result, or a halved series, if you like, with Australia retaining the urn. I think also, maybe this is slightly defeatist and English of me, but I also think it'd just be a fantastic result for England, given everything. I know Australia, this particular Australia team is maybe evolving a little bit. Rachel Haynes retiring, Meg Lanning obviously not making the tour for health reasons. Alyssa Healy, Elise Perry, maybe, I hate using terms like this, but maybe just slightly getting on a little bit. They're into the autumn of their career. I still think it would be just a fantastic result for England. They're very early in their cycle, if you like. They've lost Siva Brunt and Shrubsole over last year. They've got a load of new bowlers, and maybe in that final game on Sunday, or the decisive game on Sunday, sort of saw a little bit of that inexperience, unfortunately, for Lauren Bell getting clouted at the end, which was probably definitely pretty decisive in the result of that game. But yeah, Australia they're ahead of a curve with England. Cricket Australia made the investment earlier than the ECB did, in the major investment in women's cricket earlier than the ECB did. Women's Big Bash have been going that much longer than anything comparable here. Obviously, the Women's 100's doing a good job now, as well as the other 2 domestic competitions, but they are ahead of England on that development. I think this would be getting a draw out of the series, especially having lost the Test match, which does carry that extra weight, and coming first. I don't know whether that leads looking at just how you lay the series out again. I know it's a constant debate, and they'll probably never get it exactly perfect.
The only thing I wondered what they could do, can they come up with an odd number? A way that odd number of points are played for, and maybe, play 5 T20s that are worth a point each?
Yeah, or find a way of having, I thought the Test match was fantastic. Could we have 2?
Yeah.
I don't know. Find a way of doing it, and maybe having some odd points distributions, as you say. But yeah, obviously deeply frustrating for England to fall 4 runs short yesterday, and Nat Siva-Brunt was obviously brilliant, but I think they can be pretty proud of winning 3 games in a row against Australia. Also, if they can win this final game, it means they'll have won both the limited overs series, which would be a fabulous achievement against a team that just don't lose series. So, yeah, deeply frustrating for England. A bit sad as well, actually, at the end yesterday. It was a bit sad, And also, I thought Australia, the celebrations were quite serious. I thought they were they knew they've had a proper battle in this series. Maybe that doesn't happen all the time for them because they've been that brilliant. They're just a fantastic, they're being heralded as one of the great sporting teams ever coming here, and that's right. And England have gone toe to toe with them, so fair play.
So one way or another, one Ashes series will be decided at Taunton tomorrow, the final game of the Women's Ashes, that third one-day international. And will another be decided this week at Old Trafford? The men's fourth test. England have to win to ensure that Australia's men don't retain the urn.